Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Bad Apple press conference. For those who are joining via the phone, and actually everyone in the room, if we could ask you to please silence your phones, we'll be starting in just one moment. Thank you. Speakers, if you'd like to come up, we have some chairs here for you.
Okay, I guess we're ready. I can take this off for this part. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming today and welcome to the Denver Crime Lab auditorium. So we're here today to announce that an investigation that began in March of 2019 has culminated in a statewide grand jury indicting 7 individuals and 12 businesses on 33 felony counts for acts that occurred here in Denver. What we call this is the Bad Apple case. And the story of the Bad Apple case is an excellent example of how well law enforcement collaborates here in Colorado. In this instance, as a group, we've dismantled a sophisticated international human trafficking operation. With our partners that are here with us today, the Denver DA's office, the Denver Police Department, and the Attorney General's office have been able to present this case to a grand jury and receive an indictment. So, Denver Police Chief Paul Pazin, just want to thank you for allowing us to use the crime lab so we can socially distance. And also, I know when you announced the formation of your new human trafficking unit here in this exact room, to work with our human trafficking unit in the Denver DA's office, I mentioned then that human trafficking is a very high priority for me. It was when I was in the legislature and continues to be a high priority. But to be effective, really, in combating it, we really need a coordinated effort. So I know that the chief has been very pleased with the work of his unit and working with our unit to form this partnership. And then we have the additional partnership with the Attorney General's office, Attorney General Phil Weiser and Allison Conity, who's the Senior Assistant Attorney General. The AG's office was instrumental in getting the case presented to the statewide grand jury, and you took on the role of the financial auditor. We appreciate the heavy lift that the AG's office did by looking into 76 bank accounts involved in this indictment. We could not have brought this case without the assistance of the Attorney General's office. So, Bad Apple, what is it all about? Bad Apple originated back in March of 2019 when Aurora's manager of tax and licensing, Trevor Vaughn, contacted the Chief Deputy District Attorney in Denver in our human trafficking unit. And he explained to her that the illicit massage parlors that they were closing down in Aurora because of their licensing scheme, those had shut down but might have moved here to Denver. So that sparked the investigation by DPD's Human Trafficking Unit, our office, and the Attorney General's office into the Denver Apple Spa, thus the code name, Bad Apple, and other massage businesses, including the Tulip Spa, 21 Spa, Mojo Massage, Ocean Foot Massage, and some other entities here in Denver. The investigation ultimately resulted in the indictment that brings us here today. There are 7 indicted individuals and 12 businesses. And the allegations are that the defendants trafficked women from China to engage in sex acts with customers of their massage businesses. Further, we believe that we can prove that they used the funds from this illicit activity to pay mortgage and utility payments for properties which they used for black market marijuana grows. The profits from the marijuana and massage businesses became a commingling of illicit funds, which we as a team needed to unmingle and understand how those funds came to be and what they were being used for. So the 7 defendants are accused of engaging in a pattern of racketeering in which the massage parlors were the nexus for running a complex pimping, prostitution, money laundering, and tax evasion operation that generated millions of dollars in profits. And that's the basis of the COCA claim, which is the Colorado Organized Crime Control Act, which we use when we can show predicate acts in furtherance of a conspiracy to commit broad criminal acts. So I want to thank everyone that has been involved in this investigation. We are certainly pleased to have been able to be part of it and to work with our partners. So I'm now going to introduce Phil Weiser, the Attorney General for the state of Colorado, to talk about his office's role.
Thank you, District Attorney McCann, and thank you particularly from our team, Allison Ponte, who really did a fabulous effort. It's important to note that a case like this doesn't just happen. This is a story of cooperation through a range of agencies. Before I get to that part of the story, let me underscore this story is not over. As you can see here with these crime alerts, there are still 2 individuals who we're looking for, and the partnership is not only with governmental entities, it's with Crime Stoppers as well. And this is a partnership that is very meaningful to us here in Colorado. It's a great organization. There are both cases like this one that are still active, but there's also even cold cases out there where their work is making a big difference. Let me start the story where a district attorney left it, which is this Arapahoe County effort recognized there was a nexus of activity, illegal activity, of sex trafficking and illegal marijuana operations. And what's worth underscoring here is that we in Colorado have legalized marijuana, we have legal cannabis, but there are also illicit operations happening. Operations that may be sending marijuana to other states illegally. And they might even be selling in Colorado without paying taxes, without the regulatory requirements. We can't tolerate that activity. It undermines our criminal laws, it potentially harms individuals in Colorado, particularly youth who might be getting marijuana from these illegal sources as opposed to the regulated market. And in this case, it had this nexus with money laundering and also tax fraud. And so this case continued with Douglas County Sheriff's involvement, the Lakewood Police Department's involvement, the Littleton Police Department, the Englewood Police Department. Colorado's Department of Revenue worked with us as well, as did the FBI and U.S. Attorney's Office. This is quite an accomplishment. In fact, I would say it's the essence of Colorado, which is we in Colorado collaborate naturally. And as the chief and I and the district attorney and I know, regularly the police chiefs in the Denver metro area get together to talk about how we work together to meet shared challenges. And part of the openness to this collaboration is to learn from one another. This is a model execution of a collaborative effort working as a team. And indeed, it wouldn't have happened had it not been a team effort. We were able to get a series of different charges, all of which we were able to then establish here as incredibly relevant, including, as I mentioned, the tax fraud charges because of the revenue that was being generated but not taxed. This is a model effort. I am so proud of our office and the work, the relationships which make law enforcement here in Colorado effective and a model for the nation. And with that, I'll introduce our Police Chief, Paul Payton.
Thank you all. I do want to reiterate the fact that's been stated already. This case is the perfect example of why we in the Denver Police Department created a human trafficking unit to augment the great work that's been going on in the Denver District Attorney's Office. We recognize that there is a need to help a vulnerable population, vulnerable people from being exploited. Our investigators identified 14 women that were being exploited by this criminal enterprise through sex trafficking. Years ago, these 14 women, the resolution or how this would have been addressed would be to arrest them for prostitution, and prosecute these victims of crime for the crimes of prostitution. We've shifted that model. Now we want to connect these vulnerable populations to services and hold the people that are exploiting our vulnerable population accountable for their actions. The indictments announced today are a result of months of meticulous investigation by several law enforcement agencies to identify exactly how big this enterprise was. The work of our dedicated investigators ultimately revealed and uncovered what you've heard: pimping, prostitution, illegal marijuana cultivation, money laundering, and tax evasion. Well, 5 of the 7 people that have been identified and indicted have been arrested. 2 of them are still at large, and we're asking for the public's help to locate these 2 individuals and bring them to justice for the crimes of exploiting these vulnerable populations. In closing, we want to let these indictments be a warning that law enforcement in Denver and our law enforcement partners across the state, that we will use every resource possible to bring to justice anyone committing these appalling acts of human trafficking in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. The Bad Apple case demonstrates, as the chief was talking about, a shift in how Denver investigates and prosecutes cases of sex trafficking. We are now disrupting the entire business operation and targeting the leaders of these enterprises, rather than, as in the past, arresting the victims and charging them with prostitution. We are now really we are focusing on the ones who actually profit from it and who exploit others and who benefit from the process. So I'm very, very pleased that we can now send this message to other human traffickers who might be thinking about coming into Denver. As the chief noted, we will bring the full force of the law against this type of operation if it begins to operate in Denver. So we will be proceeding forward with the prosecution at this point, and we're happy to answer any questions or defer to our excellent team who actually did the hard work to bring this case to indictment. So do you have any questions?
Yeah, this is Jeremy with 9 News on the phone. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So the 14 women that you've identified and involved in this investigation, you said, I'm under the understanding that they're Chinese nationals. What happened to them? Where are they now?
So they are primarily have left the Denver area. We did not charge them. So as far as I know, they are no longer in this jurisdiction.
Are they still in the country?
We don't know.
Were they provided with any sort of resources on, help or anything, considering the fact that they were, involved in human trafficking?
Yes, thank you for asking that question, Jeremy. We have partnered with the Asian Pacific Development Center, which is a local nonprofit that works with people of Asian descent who are in Denver, in Colorado, to help provide those kinds of services. So they were provided the opportunity to work with the Asian Pacific Development Center to help them get resources and get them where they wanted to go.
And I got one more last question. Sorry, I don't want to take up too much of other people's question time. Any indications that any of these women were very young or underage?
No, they were all over 18. Any other questions, Jeremy?
That's it for me.
Okay, yes.
District Attorney, so 7 were named in the
Hi, this
indictment,
is
5 are in
Nicole from
custody.
Channel 9. Can I ask a question?
Yes, sorry, Esteban. Go ahead.
Okay, somebody else talking. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, go ahead.
Since we're talking about the women, what does it mean for you and for law enforcement to have this change in how these cases are prosecuted, and that you're not prosecuting the women, that you're going after those who were taking advantage of them? And were you able to have any kind of conversations or know about conversations with the women where they talked about what this meant to them?
I am probably going to ask Laura Mullen to come up, who is our chief of our human trafficking unit, and answer that question.
Certainly. It's Lara, Lara. Last name is Mullen, Mullin. As to your question regarding conversations with the women, I can tell you that the shift in this case that has been the practice of the Denver Police Department is to also have culturally appropriate victim advocates and interpreters there at the scene when we're first making contact. And so, understandably, all of these women, when they were first contacted, were very frightened. But certainly, once they learned from the victim advocates who were there on the scene that they were not going to be charged with anything, that they weren't in trouble, that they were merely, law enforcement was merely there to offer support and services, all of them were certainly more comfortable. As you can imagine, this entire situation for all of them is a very scary process. Many of these women have been in this sort of cycle of exploitation for a very long time. And so just having a simple, one conversation or perhaps a few conversations doesn't take away from the general fear of the environment and that experience, but learning that they weren't going to be held accountable criminally and that we were just there to help was a pretty significant shift, and they were all definitely surprised when they learned that.
Were the women living in those facilities? I think that's one of the things that we had heard back then, is that they were living inside the massage parlors, and that's how they were able to.
Right. So the question was, were they living inside the massage businesses? Given that we were investigating numerous massage businesses that are part of this indictment, there were some businesses where there was evidence to suggest that the women were residing or living there. In other businesses, it was clear that they were living elsewhere and basically being transported back and forth.
And just a reminder for everyone on the phone, if you could please mute your phones, that would help tremendously. Thank you.
We do not. That's one of the many reasons why we've started building cases in this fashion of focusing on the money, building financial crimes cases, and not charging human trafficking charges, so that we are not dependent on or reliant on the women to come in and share their story, because we can prove the cases through the professionals, through the documents that we've subpoenaed and the evidence collection.
So the 7 people that have indicted, 5 are in custody right now?
That's correct.
Okay, and then they're all Chinese nationals?
They are.
Okay, any
Hi,
other? Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Sorry. One more question that I have is, were there signs that they had of other types of abuse with these victims?
Were there signs of other kinds of abuse? No, we didn't find other signs of abuse. Any other questions?
Yes, hi, this is Zach Newman with 9 News. You got the 9 News tree on.
Yeah, really.
All worked on this a year ago, so it's been congratulations on the indictment. So I was curious, what was it organized crime in China? How are these 14 women coming over how did the operation work?
Laura, do you want to come back up?
What I can say about the connection to China is that there was clearly financial transactions going back and forth between the United States and China. There was relationships between our suspects and individuals abroad as far as the transfer of money goes. We certainly are not asserting that this is sort of being remotely operated from China, or that there is a larger figure or organization who were directing what's happening. In fact, it is our belief that this model is more franchised in that each of these individuals sort of had the opportunity to take over a business, build equity, and then used that money to sort of facilitate what was happening either in the businesses or to purchase property. But we didn't see information to suggest that there was a particular person or organization that was overarching, that was directing it remotely.
Should we expect more
I should be Laura, but I'm just kind of confused as far as
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Zach.
Okay, I was just a follow-up to that. I was just curious if, so you mentioned that, like a franchising. I'm just curious what do you know about how this began?
I don't want to go too far afield of the information that's contained within the indictment. What I can share is that, you know, we began our focus on a singular individual who was associated with the Apple Spa. It grew from there to learn about these additional individuals who we indicted. It's our belief that it sort of began with him largely and grew from there.
We're going to take a question from the room now. If the callers could please hold.
I was just gonna, should we expect additional indictments, and are there ongoing investigations for some of these other businesses that moved from Aurora to Denver? I mean, is this ongoing, or is this it for now, just based off that tip you guys got from Aurora?
What is contained within the indictment is a very long and complex investigation. We had sort of wrapped it up in its totality at the end of this indictment. That's not to say that we aren't still monitoring and aware of you know, what may be additional behavior, but there isn't an anticipated superseding indictment or anything of that sort at this point. That it's difficult to say because it depends on the sentencing structure, given that we have a range of charges all the way starting up at a class 2 felony, the COCA charge, down to misdemeanors, keeping a place of prostitution. Given that this is over a period of time, a judge could decide to sentence, let's say that a suspect or one of the defendants is convicted of all counts. The judge has a pretty broad range to decide as to whether or not he or she would sentence them concurrently or consecutively, in light of the ongoing pattern that this is not a singular act. And so it's difficult to give you an exact range, but I can tell you that we could be looking at plus 30 years plus in the Department of Corrections.
Back to the phone if there are any additional questions.
Yep. I don't want to dominate the time, but I have another if no one else has one.
I think it's all you.
Okay, thanks. So I noticed in our story that Denver Apple Spa's old name was mentioned in the indictment in addition to the new one. The previous name was Ocean Foot Massage, but I saw that Ocean Foot Massage was mentioned in the indictment. Was there a second operation within Ocean Foot Massage, or is the indictment related to the activity in Aurora?
The Ocean Foot Massage was listed only as part of the larger investigation. We did not conduct any operations at the Ocean Foot Massage. As we were aware, the Ocean Foot Massage had been shuttered by the time we were actively investigating this case.
Understood. And why wasn't Elite Spa mentioned in the indictment? That was one of the ones that was shut down in Aurora that we had noticed activity as well.
There was no information in this investigation to tie the Elite Spa to this collection of suspects.
Gotcha. No worries. And is there something, an additional resource that could have made this investigation easier? I mean, I know a year is a lot of time to be doing this. Would like something similar to an Aurora ordinance, would that have made this easier?
It certainly would. You know, we've had conversation about that. Obviously, the information that we received from Trevor Vaughn that he knew as a result of the Aurora ordinance helped us start this investigation far ahead than where we would have been had we had to sit and simply surveil the business and be patient to figure out ownership and who was associated. So that that transparency and the regulatory piece that he has in place certainly helped us with identifying a suspect. And yes, if we had something similar, it would certainly expedite the process because we would know immediately who was the person associated with an individual business that we were focusing on.
Zach, any additional questions? Okay. Anyone else on the phone?
One last question. What was used outside of business records to connect the facilities? You mentioned some financial statements, but I was curious what type of records were used.
Certainly. So there was a number of different records that we used. There were personal records belonging to a number of suspects located at the residences involved in the indictment, bank records and financial records, certainly. There was also some police contacts that led us to know that they were known associates, their own admissions about knowing each other, things of that nature. So there were a number of different documents, change in ownership, lease documents, things that tied to the businesses that then led us to know who was the person, at least in name, who was responsible for that business.